All right, this is the Customer and Revenue Dynamics tool. It's a tool designed to help you look for insights based on your customer's revenue and how that changes over time. You'll notice it's currently set into UK pounds because that's what I have in my pocket. If you want a version in euros or dollars or any other currency, just email me via the website and I'll shoot you a copy in the currency of your choice. So before we get into the specifics of what all these different tables and graphs mean, let's start at the beginning on the input, because you'll need to put your own data in here, obviously, to get your own insights. Now, the tool ships with a bunch of fictional data so as you can play around with it. First thing you'll need to do is to highlight all of this and to delete it so as you can drop your own data in. You'll see this little counter at the top left is counts the amount of rows that have data in them, and you want that to be 0 before you drop your data in. But let's just undo that so we've got some data to look at. Okay, in terms of dropping your data in, you'll need to create it on a separate spreadsheet, obviously using these same 3 headings: name, prior period, and current period revenue. Things to watch out for: make sure there's no gaps in the data, make sure there's no duplicates in the data. Where you have a 0 in terms of prior or current revenue, make sure it's marked with a 0 or with a blank cell. Anything else, and the tool won't necessarily recognize that it is 0. So once you've dropped your data in, and incidentally, creating your data list is the most work you're going to have to do. Once you have that, everything else is automated. So you drop your data, copy and paste it into this block here, and shoot over to the output. Let's zoom in so as we can see what we're doing here. Okay, let's just walk down the left. The first thing the tool does is create 4 size categories of customers, from micro, small, medium through to large. And it designates who fits in where by using the quartiles of the data you've just put in. So it creates 4 equal size groups of customers. And these are the boundaries that the tool uses based on the data that you've input. If you want to change those category boundaries, you can do it here by changing the up to number. Of course, if you do that, you will change who fits into which category down here. So I would only do it if you have a pre-existing designation for customer size. Otherwise, let the data do the talking. Okay, so down below, based on these quartiles, we have 4 even-sized groups of customers from the smallest through to the largest. And for each category, we see the number of customers in that category, the total revenue they've spent in the current period, and the average revenue per customer. And at the end here, we see a total look at the entire customer base. The prior period uses the same process, but I should stress it uses the same quartiles as the current period. A consequence of that is you won't see such an even spread always between customers, but that's okay. It's more important that we have comparable size categories and we stay consistent. So that's why you might see some difference there. But again, same data: name, number of customers, total revenue, average revenue per customer. Below that, we show a walk from your prior period revenue through to your current period revenue. And the steps we take on that walk is how much growth came from the growers, how much did we lose from our fallers and those that had no change, how much did we gain from new customers, and how much did our lost customers cost us. And we also have that broken down in numbers for a sort of scale of the events. Underneath that is a graphical waterfall chart, a revenue walk, same categories as you see above. It takes you from prior period to current period revenue by focusing on the steps in between. Underneath that, we have a similar look, but rather than based on their growth status, it's based on their size status. So how much growth came from our 0 customers in the prior period, those that didn't have any revenue with us, how many from those that were micro, and so on. So you can take a look either way. I prefer the growth status, but both are available. And if you prefer either one, that's up to you. Now, over here, we have what I call the customer migration table. And this shows how people have moved between the size categories over the 2 periods. How it works is this. Let's take the micro customers. These total 241 from the current period. So this column shows all of the 241 current micro customers, which you can see is the same number as you get over here. The steps along the way show you what status they were in the prior period. So for example, 7 customers who are currently micro customers in the prior period were 0, so they were new customers. 65 current micro customers in the prior period were also micro, so they're pretty stable, and so on. By looking at the intersects between current and prior period, you can see what customers were in the prior period and what status they are in the current period. Now this can be useful. Remember, this is a tool for insights and we're looking for common cause. If you see there's a bunch of customers that went from being small to large, you might want to ask the question, what was driving that? Are they from a particular industry, a particular geography? Do they use a certain product? Are they in an industry that's generally growing, and so on and so forth? And you're looking to learn lessons that you can then apply to your marketing strategy. Is this something we need to double down on? Is this something we need to focus more of our attention on? And also you can take the negative view and say, where are we losing the most? Which customers are costing us a lot of money? And what's driving that? Is it a similar or same competitor? Is it a technology that's changing things? Is it a sector that's just naturally falling away? And you can look at the table below for the financial impact. So let's take these 17 medium current customers that came from 0 in the prior period. And we can see down here, they accounted for 251,261 of growth. So this is another sensitivity. You might look and say, what's the source of the biggest growth? In this case, it's 1.79 million, and they happen to be the 51 large current customers that used to be micro. So what drove their growth? That's the sort of insights we're looking for, and we'll show you on the next tab how you get the detail for that. But before we do, let's just look at the revenue migration version below, which is based on total revenue. Same format, but rather than growth or numbers, it's total revenue. Now, I don't find this as useful. Somebody asked me to put it in and I did, and as it costs us nothing to reproduce it, it stays. But I don't tend to spend a lot of time looking here, but just for completeness, it shows revenue by each migratory segment, and it also shows what percentage of total revenue that represents. But I spend most of my time here looking for the nuggets. Other thing to remember, the reason why this way of looking at things can be quite important is when you have an overwhelmingly large data set and you're just looking at growers or you're just looking at fallers, you might miss some of the nuances that tend to point you towards groups of customers that have similar drivers of their growth. So this is about chunking up your workload and allowing you to look at very specific smaller numbers of customers rather than the big picture. But let's go look to the detail tab, because this is where you'll find out who you should be talking to answer some of the questions. It lists, starting with the left, all of the growers. So any customer that has existed in the current period whose revenue is larger than it was in the prior period is a grower by definition. And they're all listed here. So we can see that George Collier is our largest current revenue customer, and we can see fairly significant growth from George Collier. You could search these any way you want by using this tab. So you could say prior revenue, and this answers the question, who were our biggest customers in the prior period that are still growing? And we see Agnes jumps to the top of the queue, albeit with a fairly modest growth, but nevertheless, she was the largest customer in the prior period that is still growing. You might want to look at that delta number, delta being the difference between prior and current, and say, just show me who's the biggest grower in absolute terms when I get it to work. So here we now start to list groups of customers based on their absolute growth. These might be some people you group together and look for common causes. They're all growing spectacularly in terms of absolute growth. What's driving that? Or you could look at their overall percentage, where we see 78,000% growth, which is pretty spectacular, although it is from 18 to 14,000. So again, you can cut this data any way you want. I'm going to set it back to prior revenue. Similarly for the fallers and no change, you've got the same categories that you can search by and the same drop down to allow you to search the list any way you wish. Same with new, although there's no filters on new or lost for that matter, because all you really care about are who are my biggest new customers, who are my biggest lost customers. Again, these groups might be something to dig into. The top 5, what's the common cause? How did we win this business? What was the the key to our success, and can we extrapolate and accentuate that across the portfolio. Let's get over to the revenue migration. This is where you've got these chunked up groups of customers that allow you to go deeper. So let's take an example. Let's take these 17 customers that were medium in the current period and grew from 0 in the prior period. So who are they? The way we look for them is we just set the category boundaries appropriately. So the prior category would be 0 in this case, and the current category would be medium. And we see the 17 customers that make up that group. And we can see them, obviously there's no prior revenue or no delta percentage because they're new customers, but we see them and we can search them. In this case, I guess we'd search by current revenue and we would see their sizes. What's common about them? What is it that we can learn? Now, you can choose any category to any category. That's the beauty of the tool. If you choose the same categories, so medium to medium, we can see here that there are 59 customers that were medium in the current period and also medium in the large. And if we scroll down, hopefully we'll see that there they are. There's the 59 customers. And you can search them any which way. If you search by the delta, by the difference, one of the quirks of Excel is it measures distance from 0, doesn't care which direction it is. So the largest distance is 9,000, happens to be a growth number, but the second largest is 8,700, which happens to be a negative number. If you want to refine this list and look only at the growers or fallers, you can do it here and just say show growers, and then it will just give you all those customers that are growing, and obviously the same with fallers. Watch out that you set it back to all. If you have it set for growers, say, and you're looking at a prior category of medium and a current category of small, well, by definition, they have to be all fallers. And if you set that to growers, you won't see anything here. If ever this is completely blank, it's probably because of how these tabs are set. So just pay attention to that. And that is it. It's a tool for taking all of your revenue, giving you a way to look at it in a fairly comprehensive yet low effort way to look for insights. It's not for every business. Not every business will get insights. But if you can manage to produce that initial list with fairly low effort, then this is just a freebie. This is just a way of looking at your data that may or may not give you insights. And that is the extent and purpose of the tool. If you have any questions, get in touch via the website.